Today, we welcome back psychologist and author Dr. Dan Peters. Dr. Dan joins us for part one of a new discussion about his not-to-be-missed book, From Worrier to Warrior, A Guide to Conquering Your Fears. This is a great book. This book shows kids how to overcome their worry and fear using easy-to-follow strategies, and it's great for adults too. Dr. Dan, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your book with our viewers.
Well, thanks for having me back, Don.
So my first question is about the worry monster. What exactly is a worry monster, and does everyone have one?
Ooh, two good separate questions there. So the worry monster is a fictitious imaginary creature. And of course, with our kids that worry, we want to make sure that we tell them we don't need to give them something else to worry about. So it is a fictitious imaginary creature that messes with us, that tells us scary things, that lurks in the shadows, and really makes us worry, makes us anxious, makes us fearful. And the way this came about is through a type of therapy called narrative therapy, where you externalize the problem from the person. Because lots of us are walking around thinking like we have these problems that are a part of us. And what this work shows that if we can get some distance from the problem, in this case, the worry monster, and bring it to life, that we can gain a different perspective in this narrative. We can talk back to it. We can use our team, our parents, our teachers, our other loved ones to help us gang up on this mythical creature that has too much power in our lives. Does everyone have one? I would say that everyone has one from time to time. Some people are blessed with very low levels of worry, and there are a lot of us out there that have moderate to severe levels of worry, anxiety, and fear, or worry monsters. So it really is a continuum, but I think everyone has experience with that quiet monster whispering things in our minds that makes us afraid.
Well, I was worried for so long of what was under my bed that I paid no attention to what was actually in the bed with me, and that was my worry.
Yep.
So I could relate to that. I definitely have a really big worry monster there. Now, in your book, you state that you and the worry monster go way back. Now, what sorts of experiences have you had with your own worry monster, and how have they impacted your life?
So I didn't realize that I worried as much as I did until I got older, because, we just used to how we think. And so when I talk about this at the beginning of the book, I was definitely wired more towards worry and more perfectionism. Being a firstborn person, in hindsight, I was always very more like wanting to please, not wanting to get in trouble, wanting to do the right thing. Achievement, getting those marks, getting those, like, doing well seemed very important. And of course, when you're really focused on not getting in trouble, not doing anything wrong, and achieving, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of worry. And so one story that I talk about is I remember being in middle school, and I would be in bed and I'd go through a checklist of all the things that I needed to worry about or to acknowledge or to make a plan for. And then remembering a time that one of the rare times that I went through my whole list, and I was thinking like, oh, wow, I everything's resolved. I don't have anything to worry about, and taking a deep breath. And then within a few moments, oh my gosh, what do I need to worry about? Because it was so unfamiliar to not have something to worry about. That's one example. And then later in life, it wasn't until graduate school, or maybe even beyond, like here I am in graduate school or beyond in psychology, and no one had ever talked to me about perfectionism. And I realized, wow, I have perfectionistic thinking. I have this fear of failure. And where it really resonated with me was in my sports career. I was a competitive tennis player. Sports is a really important part of my upbringing. And my coaches had difficulty understanding why I couldn't consistently perform in the real deal as I could in practice. And as I look back, not always, but often, I was afraid of not living up. I was afraid of losing. And, and so we say with perfectionism, it's when the fear of failure overwhelms the joy of experience or success. So those are just a few examples that really resonated with me. And I will say it's that having that personal experience really gave me the empathy to do the work with my clients. And then as a parent with kids with similar struggles from time to time. So the worry monster and I go way back, and he still likes to visit every once in a while, but I'm on to him.
Yeah, I think my worry monster might know your worry monster. I think
I'm sure
they're probably related.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
So what are the different types of anxiety, and what might they look like?
Mm-hmm. So I like to think about anxiety in terms of these ballparks, and how another way of looking at it is how the worry monster bullies us. You can also think of them in terms of actual diagnoses, but I'm going to go through a few of them to think about the ballparks. So one is a panic attack, which is the ultimate worry monster attack. And that panic attack is when you literally go into that fight and flight response, which, your heart starts pumping, you have trouble breathing, blood leaves your brain and your stomach to go to your arms and your legs, and you have all these physiological sensations, and you really think, you can't think, the sky is falling, you might not make it through this moment, and it's terrible. They never last, they never result in catastrophic long-term events, but they're really hard. So that's a panic attack. We have generalized anxiety, which is really the classic worry monster, which is worry, generalized worry. Am I okay? Are you okay? Are you going to come back and get me? Does this look all right? Did I do it okay? Am I going to make the team? What if they don't pick me? It's just lots of worry, and it's really pervasive. That's generalized worry. Then we have specific phobias or specific worries that many people know, like fear of dogs, fear of heights, fear of closed spaces, fear of spiders. And those they're more discreet, and often people can get around them to a degree. Like I'm afraid of insects or spiders, so I'm just never going to go camping. The problem is it really ends up impacting life and life experiences. The other classic example is dogs, where all of a sudden you're not going to go to parks, you're not going to go to friends' houses because there's dogs there. Another common one is social anxiety, which really has to do with the fear of being humiliated in a social situation to the point that you avoid it, or that you are going to have a panic attack of thinking about saying something silly or dumb in front of the class. So again, when we think of social anxiety, we think of the humiliation or fear of being laughed at. A few more, there is separation anxiety, where especially kids when they're younger, fearing separating from parents, feeling something bad's going to happen to them or their parent. There's post-traumatic stress disorder, which we used to think about just with adults, and just with adults who are veterans, have been through very awful circumstances in war, or also in life-threatening accidents. But also kids can have traumatic responses to witnessing domestic violence, to witnessing an accident, to being in abusive, bullying situations in school. And then there's perfectionism, which is another thing for us to think about in terms of this fear of failure. It's not an actual diagnosis, but the reason I think it's important for us to think about all these is for us to educate ourselves, but also kids, that these are things, these are actual things. So they don't just think this is a part of them, that these are things that we can work on, and that they don't always need to feel this way.
A lot of anxiety there. Of course, I'm still stuck on the spiders. I don't like spiders. But you mentioned stinking thinking. I kind of like that expression, or thinking errors. Now, you mentioned they fall into two categories: jumping to conclusions about bad things that might happen, and thinking that things are worse than they really are. So what kinds of thinking errors can people have?
Mm-hmm. So I'll give a couple of the highlights. There's a, as you see in the book, there's a list of them. That the ones that happen so often are, one is called catastrophic thinking. Like it's going to be, so think about it this way, it's going to be a catastrophe. I'm going to do bad on the test. I'm going to get a bad grade. My parents are going to be mad at me. My grade's going to drop. I'm not going to get into a good college. I am not going to then have a successful life and I'm going to be a failure. And this is all from a test or a quiz, right? Like something that hasn't even happened yet. Another catastrophe, I am not going to be invited to the party and I'm going to miss out in every conversation and social situation. And I am never going to be a part of this group ever again. So all of these things occur out there. So think about catastrophe. That's one of the thinking errors. Another one is mind reading. This is one that we do as humans, right? Oh, they're really mad at me. They are not going to invite me. They don't like me. This is something that we see. An example is you're on the playground and you're talking to a friend and there's a group of people talking and you see someone look at you, laugh and look away. Well, we're mind reading. Oh, they think I look silly. They think I look dumb. They're talking about what I said in class. And most of the time, it turns out they weren't even looking at you. They might have just been turning away and happened to look in your general direction when they were laughing, or they're looking beyond you. But we're mind reading and thinking bad thoughts, scary thoughts. Another one is selective attention, that we are just focusing on the negative aspect of a situation, because that's what the worry monster wants us to look at, the one thing that went wrong. So let's say I take a test and here's for a perfectionist and there's 100 questions and I got 90 of them right. I focus on the 10 I got wrong and turn that into something that, see, I never do as well as my friends. See, my efforts never pay off. So selective attention. And the list goes on. And it's useful to think about these because we talk about thinking about our thinking, or otherwise known as metacognition. We know that successful people think about their thinking. And the worry monster does not want us to think about our thinking. The worry monster wants us just to accept all of the negative and scary thoughts instead of go, I'm not feeling too good right now. What am I thinking? Oh, I'm thinking that I might not do well later today. Is that a useful way to think about that? Or am I just being bullied right now? No. Let's just think about it's going to be nervous trying out for that part, but I've really tried hard and I'm prepared and I'm just going to do my best. So these are all ways just to think about how the worry monster uses our thinking against us.
Yeah, that chapter on thinking errors was just staggering. All the possible ways that we mess with ourselves. Mm-hmm. A great book. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Dr. Dan, for those helpful explanations and strategies. So countless millions of adults and children suffer from anxiety. And most of those suffering in silence rather than seeking help. So having accessible, compassionate information available to people of all ages is life-changing. We will be back soon with Dr. Dan for part 2 of our discussion with more practical, doable actions for turning worriers into warriors. Now, you can look at the description below for more information about Dr. Dan's work and where to buy his books. Thank you again.
Thanks, John.